Has this ever happened to you? You're with a man, and everything on the surface seems right. The chemistry is electric. The conversations are good. He says all the things you want to hear. But deep down, in that quiet, intuitive part of yourself, a little voice is whispering that something is off. It's a feeling you can't quite name, an almost invisible boundary you sense between the heat of carnal desire and the warmth of true love. We all think we can tell the difference. We believe we are masters of our own hearts, capable of distinguishing a fleeting passion from a lifelong connection. But so often, we get it wrong. We mistake a kiss born of impulse for a gesture of affection. We confuse an embrace driven by possession for one of shelter and safety. And those three little words, "I love you," can sometimes be the most deceptive of all, a siren's call masking the raw, impersonal voice of lust. The great psychologist Carl Jung, a true master of the soul's hidden depths, knew that love was never just a simple, pleasant emotion. For Jung, love was something far more profound, almost terrifying in its honesty. It's that rare, sacred moment when two souls can finally meet with nothing left to hide. No masks, no defenses, no clever tactics or rehearsed lines. Just pure, unfiltered presence. But that's the challenge, isn't it? How do you really know? How can you discern whether the man lying beside you, the man whose hands you hold, truly loves you or if he just craves you? How do you know if he's touching your heart or if he's merely seeking to possess a beautiful object for his own gratification? The answers aren't found in grand declarations or expensive gifts. They're hidden in the unconscious, in seemingly small manifestations that reveal truths he might not even realize he's showing you. It all begins with the eyes. In any intimate relationship, the eyes are the first and final arbiters of truth. They are the primal gateways, capable of expressing raw, animal desire. But they are also the only true doorway to a connection that transcends the physical. The eyes simply do not lie. They don't need words, because they bypass the logical, thinking part of your brain and speak directly to your intuition. When a man looks at you in a certain way, you feel it instantly. A surge of unnamed feeling rushes through you. Sometimes it's a thrill, a jolt of electricity, and other times it's a faint, quiet sigh of recognition. Of course, not all gazes are created equal. You've likely felt the difference. There are the eyes that look at you and seem to be stripping away your clothes with their imagination, a gaze that lingers obsessively on every curve of your body, making you feel less like a person and more like a beautiful object on display in a museum of his desires. That gaze can be intoxicating for a moment, but it leaves you feeling hollow, seen, but not known. But then, there is another kind of gaze. It's deep, it's soulful. It's a look that seems to go straight through your physical form and into the very core of your being, as if it's listening to a secret you haven't yet found the courage to express, even to yourself. That is the gaze that ignites your intuition. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." This is profoundly true in love. In those moments of raw intimacy, when all defenses are down, a man's eyes will tell you everything you need to know about love or its glaring absence. A man who is driven solely by desire will look at you as an object. His gaze is filled with craving, but it's empty of depth. It glides over you, appreciating your beautiful skin or your alluring curves, but it doesn't truly linger on you. Desire is about possession. It craves stimulation and novelty. It looks in order to imagine, to control, to feel the flesh. That kind of gaze is often hurried, almost frantic, or it's brimming with a possessive energy that feels more like a claim than an invitation. It is the gaze of pure instinct, seeing something it wants to have rather than something it wants to connect with. Love, however, looks at you differently. Love doesn't look at you to satisfy itself. It lingers in its gaze, like a child sitting before a roaring fire for the very first time, full of wonder and a quiet reverence. When a man truly loves you, his eyes hold you without imprisoning you. They aren't rushed, they aren't self-serving. It is the look of pure presence, the look of someone who is fully, completely there with you, and within you, as if the entire world around you has melted away. In that sacred moment, it's just two pairs of eyes holding a silent meeting between two souls that have, against all odds, finally recognized each other. Jung would call this the awakening of the feminine archetype within every man, the stirring of what he termed the anima. When a man's anima is awakened, he stops operating solely from a place of cold reason or raw instinct. He begins to experience the world with emotional depth, with empathy, and with a profound yearning for true connection, not just physical touch. The clearest sign of this awakening is a gaze that listens. It doesn't listen to sounds, but to feelings, to your existence, to all those fragile parts of you that you might still be too afraid to face yourself. When a man is in love, his gaze doesn't just look outward. It reflects his own inner world back at you. He can look at you and silently accept all of you, including your cracks and your scars. He doesn't see you as some flawless fantasy he needs to preserve. Instead, he sees a real, living, breathing being, fragile, maybe a little wounded, but deeply, achingly worthy of being loved. He isn't afraid to touch that fragility with his gaze, because his gaze doesn't judge. It is simply there, honest and fully present. In moments of physical intimacy, this silent communication of the eyes becomes even more powerful. If he holds your gaze in those most vulnerable of moments, right after a kiss, during a deep embrace, or amid the staggered breaths of lovemaking, that is the undeniable sign of a man who is present with his entire being. He doesn't need to say, "I love you," because in that single, unwavering look, you know. You feel it in your bones. He is here with me. Conversely, a man driven by fear, by a need to conceal himself, or by a fundamental inability to connect authentically will avoid your eyes, especially when you are at your most vulnerable. He might kiss you with a searing passion, but his eyes will remain tightly closed, as if to block you out. He might make love with a fervor that makes you feel like you're his entire world, but the moment it's over, he won't dare to look deeply into you. Jung called this his shadow, the rejected, hidden part of himself that makes him terrified of being exposed, of being truly seen, of losing control. A truthful gaze is a place of surrender, where a person is seen not just for who they are on the outside, but for everything they are deep within. Many men who do this don't even know why they're doing it. They might chalk it up to not being the romantic type or a dreamer. But the deeper truth is that they've never been taught how to open their hearts and embrace the terrifying beauty of vulnerability. When love is absent, the eyes turn away, because looking deeply into you would mean looking deeply into themselves. And not everyone is ready for that kind of self-confrontation. True love doesn't fear being seen. It stands before you, imperfect, unadorned, but breathtakingly real. Think about that small, profound detail. The look right after he closes his eyes for a kiss and then slowly opens them again to find yours. That isn't just an instinct. It's a confirmation. He's silently asking, "Are you still here? Is this real?" It's the subtle trembling of someone who is in love, not because he's uncertain about you, but because, for the first time, he feels something so real it might not be a dream. You cannot fake that gaze. And you cannot mistake the gaze of love for the gaze of possession. The one who wants to possess you looks at you as if he is appraising you, checking you, calculating his claim. The one who truly loves you looks at you as if he is quietly, wholly, offering himself. But true love doesn't stop with a look. It reveals itself in the place he assigns you in his heart, which brings us to the next, crucial sign. A sign that shows you are not merely desired, but prioritized. When a man truly loves you, his deepest craving shifts. It's no longer about his own satisfaction, but about the profound, soul-deep joy he feels from seeing you happy. On a purely instinctual level, Every human being is wired to seek pleasure, but true love is what allows us to transcend that basic instinct. It doesn't just seek gratification, it seeks a state of harmony, a sacred space where the ego is no longer the tyrannical center of the universe. This becomes most obvious in how he behaves during your most intimate moments, not in their intensity, but in the degree to which he prioritizes you. A man driven purely by his desire will always act with his own goal in mind. That goal might be release, it might be conquest, it might be a need to feel in control, or it might be about proving something to himself. In that dynamic, you become a means to his satisfaction. Your emotions, your comfort, your unique experience, all of it becomes secondary to him getting what he wants. This is the kind of man who is often rushed, who doesn't seem to listen to the subtle cues of your body, who lacks the patience to truly feel your presence. He may touch your body, but he never pauses to sense what you're feeling. He's on a mission, and you're just part of the landscape. In stark contrast, a man who truly loves you does something radically different. He listens to your body and your emotions as if they were an extension of his own. He is deeply invested in you feeling comfortable, valued, and completely at ease in every shared moment. Your joy isn't just a secondary bonus for him, it's the primary goal. And this isn't some calculated behavior he learned from watching tutorials online. It's the natural, spontaneous response of a man who feels a genuine, unshakable emotional connection. According to Carl Jung, this is a powerful manifestation of the integration of the ego and the unconscious, a state he called conjunction, or the sacred union of souls. When a man reaches this state, he no longer seeks individual gain. He begins to act as part of a shared, interconnected system. He isn't trying to impress you or score points. He simply wants you to feel safe and deeply connected with him. When that becomes his priority, intimacy is transformed from a physical act into a sacred journey where both of you can touch the deeper layers of consciousness. You can see this prioritization in the smallest of details. It's in the way he asks you what you like and actually remembers it. It's in the way he makes you smile and then treasures that smile. It's in how he adjusts his rhythm to match yours, ensuring your comfort, or how he simply pauses, looks at you with eyes full of genuine care, and asks, "Are you okay?" In those quiet moments, love is breathtakingly present. It isn't a technique, it's a surrender. Even more profoundly, it's an act that transcends the ego. The ego always demands to come first. The ego wants to receive before it gives. But when a man is truly in love, he is no longer exclusively controlled by his ego. He can step back, not from a place of weakness, but from a place of enlightened strength, because he has realized a fundamental truth of connection. Seeing you happy makes me happy. This represents a monumental shift from the raw energy of possession to the generative energy of connection. It's what Jung would describe as the full awakening of the anima in a man's soul. And you can feel this difference on a cellular level. In relationships based solely on desire, everything feels like a race. Every action is aimed squarely at the finish line, release. And in the moments after, there's often an unsettling emptiness, a coldness, a lingering sense that you've just been used. But when love is the driving force, every movement has depth. Every touch, every gesture originates from a place of authenticity. It's a desire to be present with you, not just physically, but spiritually. Sometimes this prioritization shows up most clearly in his willingness to step back, to pause the moment he senses you're not comfortable. He doesn't pressure you. He doesn't get moody or sulk because you aren't ready. For him, your consent isn't about crossing some arbitrary threshold. It's about being invited into a world where you are fully in control. He is there as a companion on the journey, not as its controller. As Jung once said, where love rules, there is no will to power. True love doesn't demand dominance or seek to prevail. When a man truly loves, he doesn't try to control the experience. He surrenders to it, right alongside you. And that is why you feel loved. not used. So ask yourself, does this man truly pay attention to you? Not just to your appearance, but to the quiet emotions, the unspoken signals your body is always sending. Does he pause when you need him to, listen when you're silent, and make you feel valued instead of measured? Because in true intimacy, the other person's joy isn't a sacrifice. It's an essential, non-negotiable part of one's own. And this is something that simply cannot be faked. A man can learn to speak eloquently. He can mimic romantic gestures he's seen in movies. But true, selfless prioritization cannot be rehearsed. It comes from a place deep within, from a motivation that transcends desire, a motivation that only takes root when true love is present. A man who desires you will want you to satisfy him. A man who loves you will want you to be fulfilled for your own sake, not his. A man who desires you sees you as an experience to be had. A man who loves you sees you as an extension of himself, a place where he finds his own joy reflected in yours. That is the simplest, yet most profound test in the midst of intimacy. Whose joy is truly being prioritized? If it's yours, not because he feels he has to, but because he genuinely wants to, then you may very well be in the presence of true love. But perhaps the most honest, unfiltered moment of all comes not during the storm of passion, but in the deafening quiet that follows it. There is a moment, often overlooked and deemed insignificant, that holds more truth than any other. It is the moment after physical intimacy has passed, after the fervor of the flesh has subsided and desire has quieted its relentless voice. When there is nothing left to conquer, nothing left to prove, what remains? What does he choose to do in that stillness? Where does his attention go? And how does he remain present with you? Or does he remain at all? In the light of Carl Jung's psychology, this is the precise moment when what he called the transcendent function begins to operate. It's a sacred window of time when the ego temporarily recedes and the true, unvarnished self starts to emerge. A man who truly loves you will not abandon the moment the second the rush of euphoria fades. He doesn't vanish as if he's just completed a task on a checklist. On the contrary, he stays. He stays not out of some polite duty or social courtesy, but because of a profound, internal need to continue being present with you. He doesn't want to withdraw from the sacred space you just shared, because for him, it wasn't merely a physical act. It was a journey of deep soul connection, and after that connection takes place, he instinctively wants to preserve it in the quiet intimacy of holding you close, of kissing your forehead, of simply breathing beside you. Jung believed that these moments of intimacy are a gateway to the depths of the unconscious, where all the hidden parts of ourselves suddenly surface. No more masks, no more strategies, no more rational defenses. After reaching that peak of emotion, the body and mind fall into a profound stillness. And in that stillness, we have the chance to be our most authentic selves. For many, this is a terrifying moment of exposure. But for someone who is truly in love, it is a sacred one. In stark contrast, a man driven solely by desire cannot endure this kind of raw vulnerability. For him, intimacy was the goal. Once that goal is achieved, his internal compass tells him there is no reason to stay. Turning away almost instantly, picking up his phone to scroll, suddenly finding an urgent reason to get up. These actions speak with a brutal clarity. He wasn't seeking connection. He was seeking self-gratification. This is the behavior of the ego, not of love. The ego is terrified of silence. It's terrified of fragility, and it's terrified of unflinching honesty. Love, on the other hand, embraces silence because it understands that in silence, truth finally has room to breathe. A man who loves you won't retreat as if he's just finished a job. He will gently touch your hair or lie quietly beside you, perhaps saying something soft and gentle, or perhaps saying nothing at all. But you will feel it. You will feel his presence, clear as day. He is there. He is not going anywhere, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. He is present with you. as if you have become a safe harbor for him to finally let go of all his defenses, to be himself without needing to perform or project strength. And sometimes, in that quiet, post-intimate space, he will share things with you that you've never heard before. A distant childhood memory, a secret fear, a question about life he hasn't yet found the answer to. He does this because he finally feels safe enough to reveal the most vulnerable parts of himself. Carl Jung would call this the withdrawal of the ego, a state where our conscious, controlling self no longer dictates every reaction, and the unconscious finally begins to speak its truth. When this happens, two people stop playing their assigned roles. He is no longer the strong man, and you are no longer the alluring woman. All that's left are two souls, resting beside each other, fully present, as if the entire outside world has dissolved into mist. If you have ever experienced such a moment, you know it is far from trivial. It is the quiet, irrefutable evidence of true love. One of the greatest modern misconceptions about intimacy is that the climax is the final destination, and everything that comes after is just an epilogue. But biologically, this is precisely when the body and brain reveal the deepest truths about our emotional state. During orgasm, the body releases a cascade of powerful hormones: dopamine, oxytocin, and prolactin. Dopamine, the reward hormone, creates intense feelings of pleasure and satisfaction. It's the pursuit of this dopamine rush that a man is chasing if he's driven solely by desire. But immediately after climax, his dopamine levels drop sharply. And in that chemical drop, a man's true character begins to show. If the connection was purely physical, after the dopamine fades, he will often experience a sense of indifference, detachment, or even a restless agitation. He may withdraw, lose interest, or become suddenly distant and cold. This isn't always intentional malice. It's a typical physiological response when no deep emotional connection accompanies the act. The dopamine acted as a reward, and once the reward has been obtained, the ego rushes back in, seeing no reason to stay engaged. However, if there is a deep, abiding emotional bond between you, his brain doesn't just release dopamine. It also floods his system with oxytocin and vasopressin, hormones inextricably tied to closeness, attachment, bonding, and trust. These are often called the cuddle hormones for a reason. They make the body and mind crave prolonged closeness, to hold on to the moment, to stay longer. At this point, his choice to remain present with you after intimacy is no longer just a conscious decision. It's biological evidence of a profound bond. Carl Jung didn't speak of hormones, but he understood that human nature is largely driven by unconscious impulses, parts of ourselves we don't consciously recognize, but which act upon us nonetheless. These chemical responses are a kind of language of the unconscious. A man who is truly connected to you, emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically, will experience an entirely different physiological state after intimacy. He doesn't feel done, he feels at peace. He isn't relieved because it's over, he's relieved because he's with the right person. In our modern world, where speed reigns and emotions are often suppressed behind a veneer of performance, a man choosing to stay present after intimacy is no longer a given. It is an act with profound psychological significance, for it requires something increasingly rare: the courage to remain in a state of vulnerability. And if you've experienced the opposite, a man turning away the second it's over, leaving you with a hollow feeling of emptiness, trust that feeling. Your body doesn't lie. It knows when it's been cherished and when it's been used. The coldness you feel after intimacy doesn't come from the air in the room. It comes from the void between two souls that never truly met. As Jung once wrote, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. You can be lying right next to someone, but if they've retreated into their own world, you are as alone as you could ever be. No one teaches men how to stay. They learn it from love. Love is the quietest teacher. It doesn't instruct with words, but with the feeling of being able to be oneself beside another without fear of being harmed. And a man only learns this when he loves, truly loves. For true love is not only measured by whether he's there after intimacy, but whether you both are truly meeting in the depths of the unconscious. When that happens, something else, something even more magical, begins to unfold. It's a harmony that is no longer chance. It is an ancient language between two souls who are remembering each other. Not all connections begin with words. In fact, the most profound bonds require no language at all, no conscious agreement, no one deciding to set the pace. They simply happen, as if two people have stepped into an invisible, sacred space where their heartbeats, their breaths, their gazes, and their bodily movements begin to merge into one seamless rhythm. Jung would call this a vivid manifestation of the collective unconscious, a place where two souls don't just meet, but truly recognize each other. In your most intimate moments, if there is a synchrony between you and him that requires no effort, that feels utterly natural, it is not by chance. It is the moment your unconscious minds begin to speak a language far older than words. When you shift your position, he seems to follow naturally. When you take a deep, shuddering breath, you realize he is breathing in rhythm with you. When you feel a silent longing to be held tighter, his arms envelop you just a fraction of a second before you could ever voice the need. This is the invisible synchrony that modern psychology calls limbic resonance. It's the emotional and physiological attunement of two mammalian brains, and it is a clear biological sign of a safe, secure, and profound emotional connection. This synchrony cannot be rehearsed. You cannot pretend to be in rhythm with someone you don't truly connect with, because the body, unlike our words, cannot lie. A man driven solely by desire will be focused on movement, on technique, on control, on reaching his goal. He acts as if he's leading a game, or sometimes, as if he's performing a well-practiced routine. You can feel it. Everything might seem smooth on the surface, but something intangible is missing. The life, the presence, the feeling of you being a part of the journey is absent. In contrast, a man who truly loves you doesn't try to manipulate the moment. He flows into it, like a river current, neither controlling nor being swept away. He doesn't lead just to assert his power, nor does he surrender passively. Your bodies become like two instruments playing the same beautiful, unspoken symphony. Each gesture is met with a natural response, without needing words, without any conscious planning. And in that perfect harmony, the ego dissolves, making way for a feeling of profound unity. Carl Jung might explain this phenomenon as a manifestation of an archetype, an ancient soul pattern that lives within all of us. Specifically, the archetype of the sacred couple, which has existed in the collective unconscious of humanity for thousands of years. In many ancient traditions, true love was described as the reunion of two halves of a single soul that had been lost to each other. When they finally meet again, everything finds its way back to its original rhythm. This helps explain why when two people truly connect on this level, they don't need to learn how to be together. Their bodies, their minds, and deeper still, their souls, have long remembered each other. This state is also known in science as interpersonal synchrony, a phenomenon where the nervous systems of two people begin to align, leading to mirrored microbehaviors. If a man is genuinely, deeply attuned to you, he will unconsciously mimic your actions, smiling when you smile, shifting his position when you do, touching you in a way that feels like a perfect mirror to your own energy. You feel like you just fit, not in a logical way, but in a rhythmic, primal way. This simply doesn't happen in relationships driven only by desire, because desire activates the brain's reward center, while true love activates the regions associated with empathy, connection, and emotional regulation. Think back for a moment. Have you ever noticed that strange, effortless alignment in your gestures with his? When you're about to turn, he gently adjusts with you. When you feel the need to pause, he naturally slows down. When a shiver runs through you, he tightens his grip without you ever having to say, "I'm cold." This is the unconscious in conversation, a dialogue that needs no language and no logic. It is a synchrony that transcends conscious awareness, where your two nervous systems have decided, on their own, that we are safe together. Conversely, when intimacy is based on scripts and performance, you will feel a cold distance even within your own body. He may be right beside you, but he isn't with you. His gestures may be technically correct, but they lack soul. And you'll realize that even in your closest moments, you still feel profoundly alone. Jung once said the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. In true love, two people don't just harmonize. They create a space where they can become their truest selves, together. No need to be impressive, no need to maintain an image. All that's left is a quiet, powerful energy of two beings simply existing in harmony. This is what Jung called enantiodromia, the process of merging two opposites to form a unified, transcendent whole. A man and a woman, no longer bound by gender, roles, or ego, become two beings present together in a reality that is beyond naming. And because this synchrony cannot be acted, learned, or forced, it becomes one of the most undeniable proofs of real love. It doesn't just appear at the first meeting. It doesn't come from impulsive, fleeting emotions. It only emerges when there is a connection that runs deeper than physical attraction, a bond between two unconscious minds that have finally learned to trust each other. So if you find yourself wondering, is this true love, or is it just a convincing illusion? The answer isn't just in him. It's in the silent music you make together. Listen to your body. Is it responding naturally to him? Is there a synchrony happening without any conscious planning? Do you feel like you fit together effortlessly, without force, without technique, without a script? Because ultimately, that unconscious synchrony is not just a sign of love. It is the oldest language love has ever used to express what our rational minds can never fully articulate. When two people truly connect, they don't just make love, they become a single, living entity, expressing itself through the sacred rhythm of harmony. But to hear this language, to even be capable of attracting this kind of connection, you first have to be ready. Ready to turn inward, listen to your own intuition, and face the most important person in this entire equation, yourself. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Have any of these signs sparked a sudden, clear realization about the man beside you, or perhaps a man from your past? Your story, your insight, is a vital part of this conversation. The final lesson is perhaps the most difficult, but also the most liberating. It's the lesson of awakening, of learning to love yourself before you seek that love from another. Loving the wrong person is not something to be ashamed of. It is an experience so many of us go through. It's what happens when you learn to ignore your own inner voice, when you dismiss those clear, blinking warning signs, and when you trade your own powerful intuition just to hold on to something that, deep down, you already know isn't real. Nothing will drain a woman's spirit faster than giving herself, time and time again, to someone who doesn't truly see her, who doesn't love her deepest self, and worst of all, who doesn't allow her the space to simply be herself. Carl Jung had a very direct way of putting it. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. When you are not awake to your own patterns, your unconscious will drive you. You will find yourself drawn, as if by an invisible magnet, to men who don't love you with their hearts, but only look at you with the eyes of desire. You fall into a painful, exhausting cycle of trying to be chosen, trying to be kept, trying to be good enough to be loved, instead of stopping to ask the most crucial question of all: how am I living in a way that attracts this kind of love into my life? And more profoundly, am I loving myself in the exact way I wish to be loved by another? True love doesn't arrive when you finally contort yourself into a shape that you think someone else will find acceptable, It only arrives when you finally fit with yourself. It comes when you are so whole, so complete in your own being, that you no longer need someone else to complete you. In that powerful state of self-possession, you don't seek love as a lifeline to save you from drowning. You seek it as a resonance, a beautiful harmony to add to the music you are already making on your own. You don't need someone else to prove your worth, because you have already affirmed your own existence with the light you've cultivated within yourself. This awakening is the moment you stop asking, "Does he love me?" and you start asking, "Am I living in a way that is true to who I really am?" When you dare to finally face your own shadow, all those hidden fears of abandonment, those nagging feelings of unworthiness, those deep-seated habits of people-pleasing, that desperation to be loved at any cost, even the cost of yourself, that is when you begin the sacred process Jung called individuation. It is the heroic journey of returning to your own authentic self. And only when you are awake enough to choose yourself every single day can you finally choose the right person. You cannot expect a man to love you deeply while you are continuously rejecting parts of yourself. You cannot attract a relationship built on truth if you maintain a toxic, dishonest relationship with your own inner world. You must learn to love yourself, not through shallow indulgence or adorning yourself for others or putting on a display of confidence, but by radically accepting all that you are, especially the imperfect parts, the broken pieces, the scars that tell your story. A man who is capable of true, profound love will not be drawn to a flawless facade or a desperate attempt to prove your worth. He will be attracted to the energy of a woman with depth, a woman who has walked through her own darkness and has not been destroyed by it, a woman who still stands, whole and self-possessed, needing no rescue. She is a woman who understands that she is not a half, desperately searching for her other half. She is a complete soul, ready to meet another complete soul, not to trade pieces of herself away, but to build something new and beautiful together. This awakening doesn't happen in a single day. It's a process. It's the practice of sitting quietly with yourself after every hurt, not to find fault in the other person, but to gently ask, what part of me allowed this to happen? What boundary did I fail to set for myself? Awakening lies in the courageous act of refusing to lie to yourself any longer. You no longer make excuses for thoughtless behavior. You stop trying to justify his ambiguity and emotional distance. You stop romanticizing relationships that consistently make you question your own value. Instead, you embrace a vital, life-altering truth. Love never, ever comes from trying to be loved. Love comes only when you stop trading yourself away for scraps of attention. Carl Jung often likened love to a process of alchemy, a magical inner transformation where our base instincts are refined into profound emotions, and those emotions are then elevated into a state of soulful understanding. You don't need love to save you. You need love to reflect the light that you have already painstakingly kindled within yourself. And please, remember this, when you truly begin to love yourself, you become, by your very nature, incompatible with half-hearted connections. It's not a conscious choice, it's an energetic reality. You will simply no longer be drawn to those who seek only your physical form. You will find you lose patience with those who make you feel like you have to constantly question your value. And in that moment of profound self-respect, you will begin to attract men who have also learned to love, not with the fleeting heat of desire, but with the steady warmth of sincerity. Love is not a reward for being good enough. It is a reflection of the love you have already cultivated. And if you want a love that is true, you must first become a safe, loving space for yourself. That space doesn't need to be perfect, but it must be authentic. It must be honest about your vulnerabilities, your unmet needs, and your deepest desire to be loved wholly and completely, just as you are. So before you ever again ask, "Does this man truly love me?" Pause. Take a deep breath. Put a hand on your heart and ask the real question. Have I loved myself enough today to no longer accept anything that is unworthy of me? Love isn't a sudden, dramatic rainstorm that soaks your shoulders and then vanishes in the afternoon sunlight. True love is a flame, not so fierce that it consumes you, nor so cold that it dies out at the first sign of a breeze, but steady, gentle, and constant, enough to warm a soul that has weathered its own storms. To recognize it, you don't need sharp logic or a list of pros and cons. You need a heart that is quiet enough to hear the subtlest of signals, a gaze that doesn't rush, a touch that doesn't demand, a presence that doesn't bind or possess. A man who truly loves you will not make you doubt yourself. He will make you feel more like yourself than you ever have before. His presence in your life will be a clarification, not a constant, confusing question. If this journey we've taken together today has prompted you to see your relationships and yourself from a new perspective, if it has helped you realize that perhaps you are worthy of more than you've been given, then our work here is just beginning. This is more than just psychological knowledge. It's a set of tools for you to understand, to choose, and to love more consciously.
Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next content. Goodbye.